after building one Megasquirt V3, I decided to build a second one for testing purposes and potentially selling later on, or using it as a backup, or infinite number of reasons. So I'm just doing a few things on this one today. I'm running the wires underneath the 40-pin chip beforehand, before I lay the bus on there, and then I also double bust that one. The spacing was correct, so you can use two 8-pin dip package sockets right there. And then just to get the sockets to stay in there, you put a little piece of tape over them. Right? You probably already knew that. And then eject it. Let's try it. Yeah, I still got a pretty big gap. So another way to tell you to do this is put it flat on the table. Push on the pins. The same for the other side. Push on the pins gently. Let's see how she sits in there. That looks pretty good. Give it a gentle push until it seats. It's seated. So I didn't put the big ports on there yet because of the holder that I got. It's a $15 holder off of Amazon, but it does wonders. It's a pretty sweet little machine. And I'm going through and I'm cleaning up the board periodically with just some alcohol and some Q-tips. And I'll get you back up here in a minute. Alright, we're about 2 hours in on the assembly part, and I just realized I didn't get shipped a heatsink with this thing, so I gotta get on the horn with them and see if they can't ship me a heatsink. I can still lay all the components in there, I just don't want to start it and run it until I got a good heatsink on there. But yeah, just laying 20 more components in and trying to stay organized with it. Let's see, I'm about to get to assembling the crank circuit, the tack signal I mean, and just going nice and easy with the light now. So I know y'all are all shaky, but there's just a residue right there that I'm going to be cleaning. Alright, if it'll focus. Alright, here's some more residue on the base of those. This is all I'm doing as far as routine cleaning. Rudy! Yeah. Just getting inside of there and cleaning her all up. It's not too fancy, but after I get this cleaned up on this session around, I'm going to end up going to the gym, because this is a good stopping point right here. The majority of the tack circuit is put together. I just got to drop the two potentiometers on those two spots. It's not a big deal though. It's a good break point. Get all the residues out of the funky spots. Yeah. It's kind of hard to see if it's cleaning up on the phone, but it definitely is. I soldered the majority of these components from the top for now, because that's where we got access to them, And this thing's almost done getting cleaned up. Just cleaning off all the flux that the solder pukes out of it, and it goes flying all over the place. Man, while you're here, I'm gonna go ahead and give you a little. On the instructions for this, it tells you to clean up the board. But say, I'm cleaning up the backside and I get a bunch of fibers on it, it's not a big deal. But what you want to look for, let me see if I can't spot one, You see that little sliver right at the end of that pin, and it's up top right here? That little sliver is actually a chunk of solder. So whenever I went and I clipped these pins, the solder that was climbing up the post, say there's a little bit of solder on the outside of the post, you clipped it and that little chunk of solder went flying off. So you can easily short your board out with a chunk of solder that's loose like that. So you gotta do an inspection on it pretty well before you get done. Y'all giving some more short and curlies on the project. I got back from the gym and I plugged in a few more parts, as you can see on it. But I'm not quite done. We're gonna end up building some heat sinks for it. My buddy's got a mill, so we're just gonna mill some of that stuff out of there. So as you can see, the mob isn't attached to the MOV. The connectors are not attached. They're just popped in there. So I got quite a bit more soldering to do still. I got to solder the CAN wires on there. And yeah, what was the other pointers that I had for you? Pretty much just take your time whenever you're checking the component locations, and you know, if you make any mistakes, make sure your soldering iron's nice and hot before you try to pull any of the components out of there, because the traces on the board will come up with it if it's cold, right? So I mean, it's just kind of soldering removal and stuff like that, but it's kind of, if you're gonna put this thing together, man, this is plenty of components to make a mistake on, so that you're gonna have to pull it out. Luckily, this board I didn't make any mistakes. The first one that I put together, I made a handful of them. Like the first time around, I ran these wires on the bottom side of the board, and I pulled the pad off of one of the, I don't remember which one it was, but I pulled the hole off the solder onto the wire. The wire was a tight fit, and the soldering iron wasn't hot enough to penetrate through it all the way to the back side, so it didn't heat it up. Instead, I was gently pulling on it, and poop, and it popped the pad off of there. So make sure your soldering iron's really hot before you go and remove any components that you potentially made a mistake on, and yada yada yada. Alright, so what else have we done here? We just plopped the connectors on there and got done soldering those in. And I'm sitting here fashioning chunks of heatsink out of a stock engine computer, but it's a little bit thicker of a material, and I'm not sure about the overall quality of it, but they did stick it in an OEM computer. It is aluminum. It is really lightweight. It's cold to the touch. It should be some pretty good stuff. And all we're doing here is we had access to a mill, so we just take that piece and we slide it in there, and then we scribe it with the holes on the backside, and we drill those holes out and countersink them and file all the sharp edges off of it, clean it, and then stick it on the board. Right now I don't have any of the mica insulation under any of the transistors or resistors or voltage regulators, so nor do I have any heatsink paste. So this is just all to mock this up, and then all those screws are coming back out. I'm lifting them up slightly, sticking some goo, sliding a mica underneath there, and then putting it back on. So yeah, I just wanted to give you all a quick update. This thing's almost done. I'm not going to put any of the diodes in there. I'm not going to do anything on the perforated area. That's pretty much all it's getting for now. A few more steps as far as adjusting the pots and installing the Ms3 with the spacers correctly. After that, it's just prepping the case and getting things finally put together. I might have one last section of this video, I'm not sure yet. All chopped up and put together. Got a few more minor adjustments to make to it, but I wanted to show you all how I was doing this. So I'll just come in here. Let's try to do it this way. something. Yeah. Try and even it out a bit. Right. Yeah, and just tighten the nut up and it squeezes it out. All our voltage supplies screwed in there, cleaned up. Still got the MOV to install. Got the map sensor set in there with some bushings. Got all my micas. Yeah, a few more steps. This thing will be done. Good time estimate on putting this thing together. Plus like heat sink and drilling the holes out for the case and making things align a little bit. Probably got about 10 hours in it. But that doesn't include drinking with the boys. We've got about 12 hours in that case, but that's enough said. I mainly do not recommend that you Frankenstein it like this. But I gotta adjust the potentiometers on it. So let's test a few things on the computer. What I meant to get was the first time turning the key. Let's see if we cook something. Alright. Nothing's getting fried. Alright, after adjusting the pots to get 2.5 volts on the cam, and I think it was 2.5 on the crank, don't quote me. You test it at the top of the resistor on that C test point. Anyways, turn on the laptop to some composite login. Start it before you even crank. Make sure you're neutral. It's got a base map on it, so it should be able to rev if I don't kick everything out of the way. It's cold. It's running away that cold. So if you've been watching it all the way through to this process, what's the moral of the story here? Well, you need a lot of spare time to put one of these together. You need some equipment. You need a lot of knowledge. You know what you're doing so you don't short circuit stuff on your car and start a fire. You need a fire extinguisher. And, you know, this might not be for everybody. It's highly upgradable, highly optional. A lot of inputs and outputs, a lot more than most people need for a 6-cylinder, even an 8-cylinder. But what's the real ticket is you should probably just go ahead and get their latest model of computer, because it's just pretty much just building an interface box and plugging it into your car and setting up a base map and going from there. It's a pretty nice setup. All amp seal connectors and pretty nice. Hope you enjoyed this little setup. Maybe I'll do a installation video of the race pack dash.